How's it going, Starseekers? Hope everyone's keeping safe. This week has been a bit of a busy one, and so this deals video is coming slightly late. But once more, I'm going to be taking a look at 5 games on the Nintendo eShop, all priced under £1 Euro, and attempting to answer the only question that matters: are they worth a quid? Now this week we have some quite interesting titles covering a variety of genres, and before we get underway, don't forget to subscribe for future deals videos, hit that like button, and let's get started. So as always, I like to start by bringing a few games to your attention which I don't think are worth a buy. And the first of these is Diabolic, a slasher RPG which misses the mark in terms of both gameplay and storyline. Enemy AI in the game is incredibly dumb and simple, its visuals and audio lack any sort of real quality, and the whole game is just one repetitive slog, punctuated by possibly the worst looking dragon boss in gaming history. Trust me when I say you're going to want to steer clear of this one, it's diabolically bad. The next game on our shit list is Jet Ski Rush, an endless runner from Cool Small Games, who also produced a near identical title called Go Fish Go a few months prior. The game's about as unoriginal as an endless runner comes, and not really worth your time or money. Finally, we have Skull Rogue, which is only on sale in the UK and EU, so all you Americans are safe. The eShop description bigs this game up to be a roguelike RPG, but gameplay involves you just endlessly fighting 5 waves of enemies in a bunch of randomly selected rooms. AI is terrible, weapons and armour have no real originality, and skills are next to pointless, and so I suggest giving this one a wide berth. Oh, and that Sheriff Shite Super Loop drive is also still on sale, so swerve that one too. With those games out the way though, let's get on to this week's deals. First up, we have a game called Stay, a rather intriguing interactive story-driven game with puzzle elements. The game's main character, Quinn, is kidnapped and wakes up in a locked room containing a single computer, connected to a chat room in which you're present. We then join him on his journey as he attempts to make sense of it all, identify who locked him up, and seek a way out. The interesting thing about this game though is it all takes place in real time, and it uses the Switch's internal clock to track how long you're present or away from the game. The game features 24 chapters and 7 different endings, and the choices you make throughout the game impact on both Finn's emotional states and feelings towards you, as well as which direction the game's storyline takes. There are also a bunch of different puzzles for you to help Quinn work through, with varying degrees of difficulty. Now my first playthrough of the game took me about 45 minutes, and I have to say it held my attention the whole time. I ended up getting one of the game's bad endings, but I'd only actually completed 5 chapters. I thought the developers did a really good job of building Quinn's character, making him feel like a real person, especially with the way in which he corrects typos and his image and expressions change depending on your responses and his situation. Now I personally think that Stay is well worth a quid, and I recommend giving it a go even if you don't normally play this type of game. The sale date for Stay ends on the 30th of September in all regions. Next up we have Sacred Stones, an action platformer with some decent pixel visuals which focuses around boss rush style battles. Now the game starts off quite well, setting you up with your first weapon and pitting you against your first boss, a big stompy cube monster. After beating this you then get some oil to fuel a spaceship which jets you off to your first hub world. And here is where the issues start, as you have a bunch of locked doors and no direction. You end up searching for a keycard to open the doors and doing a bunch of platforming, which is actually pretty hard due to the game's controls and the speed at which your character moves. Once you've snagged the keycard, 4 rooms open containing 4 bosses, to whom you'll likely die numerous times whilst trying to work out the movement patterns and how to beat them. After beating 4 bosses, you then move on to the next area and repeat the process. Now the bosses in the game aren't terrible, but I did find many of them featured similar mechanics, such as having to dodge bosses which come from beneath or above you, or those which hop around the arena. I also found quite a lot of inconsistencies with boss difficulty, due to some having unpredictable movement patterns and with the game's hitbox detection. And so I'm left undecided as to whether Sacred Stones is worth a quid, but if you enjoy a challenge and like boss rush games, it might offer what you're looking for. Sacred Stones sale day ends on the 7th of October in the US and the 6th of October in the UK and EU. This week's third game is called Mind: Path to Thalamus, whose genre sits somewhere between a walking simulator and puzzle game. The game's intro sees our character rushing back into a house to find a girl called Sophia, presumably our daughter, moments before a massive waterspout hits the place and things fade to black. We then awaken in a Max Payne style scenario where we walk along paths and strands of light, before finding ourselves in a surreal landscape littered with images of a girl, the waterspout and writing. So from what I've played, the game sees us making our way through each area, solving puzzles as we seek the whereabouts of Sophia. We're often guided by a picture featuring a child's drawing, and occasionally find groups of sparkling lights which we can activate to get a snippet of narration from our character. Now, I didn't really understand the connection between our character, Sophia, and the landscapes in which we find ourselves, and I'll admit now that this is because I didn't play a whole lot of the game, despite me being a big fan of both puzzle and narrative driven walking simulators. Areas seemed to be surreal just for the sakes of it, and many of the game's puzzles were obscure, requiring us to completely guess where invisible walkways were, or place these tumbleweed looking spheres in specific locations. A lot of my time playing was just spent wandering about trying to work out where to go next, and often the areas that I found myself in were either incredibly dark, or shrouded in thick fog or dust, which just made progressing between locations a chore in itself. So I really didn't get into the game or enjoy what I did play, and this was probably due to the overarching theme of obscurity in both its narratives, environments and puzzles. From me, Mind Path to Thalamus is going to get a thumbs down. The game's sale date ends on the 11th of October in all regions. Moving on to our fourth game, we have Star Ghost, another genre blender which combines a shoot 'em up with Flappy Bird style control mechanics. Now, when I first got to playing Star Ghost, I wasn't too sure about it. Its visuals were pretty simple and the Flappy Bird controls came as a bit of a surprise, but they were pretty easy to get used to, and I actually had fun working my way through the first few areas of the game, all of which are randomly generated, making each playthrough unique. As you defeat enemies in levels, they drop various upgrades to increase your fire speed, shot spread and recharge your shield, and they also drop blue pickups which act as the game's currency. At the end of each section in a level, you're then able to spend these on additional upgrades, but I was a little disappointed to find out that the power-ups have limited time on them, and when it runs down, your weapon's downgraded, so you're constantly relying on enemies to drop upgrades to keep your timer going. Further into the game, you face boss battles against sentinels, which are quite challenging, especially if you don't have the upgrades. You also find new weapons further into the game, though once again these have timers limiting your usage of them. Now, I found Star Ghost to be an enjoyable high score chaser, but your success heavily relies on getting upgrades to drop and having decent layouts for levels. Sometimes you get cave layouts with plenty of room to manoeuvre through, but often you'll have chunks of rock to fly around, or very tight spaces to squeeze through like this one. Taking 3 hits will deplete your shield, ending your run, and there are no lives or continues in the game. Now, I did have a fun time playing Star Ghost despite my frustrations, and so I'm gonna say it's worth a quid. The game's sale date ends on the 30th of September in the US and the 8th of October in the UK and EU. Our final game to wrap this week's list up is Panpan, an open world puzzle adventure game with some beautifully stylised visuals. You play as an unnamed protagonist whose conical ship crash lands in a strange land. After saving your ass, the people who inhabit the area attempt to rebuild your ship, but in order to do this you have to retrieve various objects for them, and so you head out into the surrounding areas to find and recover these artifacts. Along the way you have to solve a number of different puzzles and obtain new equipment, but the game features no dialogue or comprehensible language, so at no point are you given any clear direction on where you should go or what you should do. Now, the world isn't huge and the game will likely take you around 3 hours to complete, but I frequently found myself at a loss as to what to do. I then learned that you often need to leave areas unsolved and return to complete them later on after obtaining specific objects or completing other areas. I found this to be a little frustrating as you have to memorise where you've been, and sometimes you end up wandering between areas before something clicks. Despite these issues though, I found Panpan to be an enjoyable experience. I loved its visuals and the audio was nice, and the game's puzzles are all pretty logical and aren't overly challenging. As to whether it's worth a quid, I'm gonna say yes with this one, and if you decide you're gonna pick it up, I advise moving to a new area if you find yourself at a loss partway through a puzzle. Panpan's sale date ends on the 1st of October in all regions. And with that we come to the end of this week's deals video. Hit that like button if this video helped you out, and let me know whether you're going to be picking up any of the featured games in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of future deals videos and game reviews, and jump onto the Starseekers Discord server to become part of its growing community. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care and game on.